Begin doing what is necessary, then do what is possible, and suddenly you are doing the impossible. Saint Francis of Assisi. Most people believe life is a game you can win. They chase promotions, bigger houses, more money, always striving to be number one. They treat every interaction as a competition, focused on immediate gains and crushing the opposition. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, a limited mindset that guarantees eventual failure. These individuals are playing a finite game, a game with defined rules, known players, and a clear endpoint. But life, business, relationships, these are not finite games. The truth is, you cannot win at life. There is no final scoreboard, no ultimate prize to be claimed. The game continues, evolving and changing, long after you're gone. Those who try to win are inevitably consumed by short-term thinking, sacrificing long-term stability for fleeting victories. They prioritize personal gain over systemic health, creating a toxic environment that ultimately undermines their own success. They are like chess players who focus solely on capturing pieces, ignoring the overall board position and leaving themselves vulnerable to a crushing checkmate. They may achieve temporary dominance, but their reign is always short-lived, destined to crumble under the weight of their own unsustainable strategies. The alternative is to embrace the infinite game. This requires a radical shift in perspective, a recognition that the goal is not to win, but to keep playing. It's about building resilient systems, fostering strong relationships, and contributing to a purpose larger than yourself. It means prioritizing collaboration over competition, seeking mutual benefit instead of zero-sum outcomes. Infinite players understand that their success is inextricably linked to the success of others, that a rising tide lifts all boats. They focus on creating value, not extracting it, and they invest in the long-term health of the ecosystem in which they operate. Think of a long-term business strategy. A company obsessed with quarterly earnings might slash research and development, cut employee benefits, and engage in aggressive marketing tactics to inflate short-term profits. These actions might impress Wall Street for a while, but they ultimately erode the company's long-term competitiveness and damage its reputation. An infinite-minded company, on the other hand, would prioritize innovation, employee well-being, and sustainable practices, even if it means sacrificing some short-term gains. They understand that building a lasting legacy requires a long-term commitment to creating value for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. The same principle applies to personal relationships. Someone playing a finite game might manipulate and control their partner, seeking to dominate the relationship and extract maximum personal gratification. They might prioritize their own needs and desires above all else, neglecting the emotional well-being of their partner. This approach might lead to short-term power, but it ultimately destroys trust and intimacy, leading to resentment and eventual separation. An infinite-minded partner, on the other hand, would prioritize empathy, communication, and mutual respect. They would focus on building a strong and lasting connection, recognizing that the relationship is a shared journey, not a competition to be won. Playing the infinite game requires a different kind of leadership, a different kind of mindset. It demands humility, adaptability, and a willingness to learn and evolve. It requires a deep understanding of systems thinking, a recognition that everything is interconnected and that every action has consequences. It means focusing on the long game, on building something that will endure, not on chasing fleeting victories. It's not about being the best, it's about constantly striving to be better, both individually and collectively. It is about understanding that the true reward is not winning, but the opportunity to continue playing, to contribute to something meaningful, and to leave the world a better place than you found it. The finite player views every interaction as a transaction, a zero-sum game where one person's gain is another's loss. They approach negotiations with an adversarial mindset, seeking to extract maximum value while giving as little as possible in return. They might prioritize short-term profits over long-term relationships, damaging trust and goodwill in the process. This approach is ultimately self-defeating, as it limits opportunities for collaboration and mutual benefit. The infinite player, however, understands that the world is not a zero-sum game. They seek to create win-win situations where everyone benefits from the interaction. They prioritize building strong, lasting relationships, recognizing that trust and goodwill are valuable assets that can lead to long-term success. They approach negotiations with a collaborative mindset, seeking to find solutions that meet the needs of all parties involved. This approach fosters cooperation, innovation, and mutual prosperity. The psychology of the infinite game is rooted in a deep sense of purpose and meaning. It is about understanding that life is not just about accumulating wealth or achieving personal success, but about contributing to something larger than oneself. It is about leaving a positive impact on the world and helping others to thrive. This requires a shift in perspective, from focusing on individual gain to focusing on collective well-being. It means embracing a spirit of service and recognizing that our actions have consequences for others. It demands empathy, compassion, and a commitment to making the world a better place for future generations. This mindset fosters resilience, adaptability, and a sense of hope, even in the face of adversity. The finite player is often driven by fear, scarcity, and a need for control. They see the world as a hostile place, full of threats and competition. They believe that they must constantly strive to protect their own interests, even at the expense of others. This leads to a defensive and reactive mindset, characterized by anxiety, distrust, and a tendency to hoard resources. The infinite player, however, is driven by abundance, possibility, and a sense of interconnectedness. They see the world as a place of opportunity and potential, where collaboration and innovation can lead to exponential growth. They believe that by working together, we can overcome any challenge and create a better future for all. This leads to an open and proactive mindset, characterized by optimism, curiosity, and a willingness to share resources. The infinite game demands a willingness to embrace uncertainty and adapt to change. The finite player seeks to create a predictable and controlled environment, clinging to established routines and resisting any disruption. This rigidity makes them vulnerable to unexpected events and unable to capitalize on new opportunities. The infinite player, however, recognizes that change is inevitable and embraces it as an opportunity for growth and learning. They are comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty, and they are able to adapt quickly to new circumstances. This flexibility and resilience allows them to navigate complex challenges and thrive in a rapidly changing world. The practice of empathy is central to the infinite game. It requires the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, to put oneself in their shoes and see the world from their perspective. This allows for more effective communication, collaboration, and problem-solving. The finite player often lacks empathy, viewing others as obstacles or competitors. They are unable to understand or appreciate different perspectives, which leads to misunderstandings, conflict, and missed opportunities. The infinite player, however, actively cultivates empathy, seeking to understand the needs and motivations of others. This allows them to build strong relationships, resolve conflicts constructively, and create solutions that benefit everyone involved. It unlocks the power of shared purpose. Ultimately, playing the infinite game is not about achieving a specific outcome, but about embracing a continuous process of learning, growth, and contribution. It is about committing to a set of values and principles that guide our actions and shape our interactions with others. It requires a shift in focus from short-term gains to long-term impact, from individual success to collective well-being. It is about recognizing that we are all interconnected and that our actions have consequences for others. It demands a commitment to ethical behavior, social responsibility, and environmental stewardship. This way of thinking is a journey, not a destination. Consider the ruthlessness of a corporation prioritizing short-term profits over the well-being of its employees and the environment. The finite player, in this case the CEO driven by quarterly earnings, sees the company as a vehicle for personal gain and shareholder value, narrowly defined. Decisions are made with a singular focus, maximizing profit within the next fiscal year, regardless of the long-term consequences. This manifests in various ways, such as cutting corners on safety measures to reduce costs, outsourcing jobs to countries with lower labor standards, or engaging in aggressive tax avoidance strategies. Employee morale plummets as they feel exploited and undervalued, leading to decreased productivity and high turnover. The environment suffers as the company pollutes rivers, depletes natural resources, and contributes to climate change, all in the name of immediate profit. Community ties fray as the company shows a blatant disregard for the well-being of the people in the areas where it operates. This finite approach, while potentially yielding impressive short-term results, ultimately undermines the company's long-term sustainability and damages its reputation. Stakeholders lose trust, customers seek alternatives, and the company becomes vulnerable to unforeseen risks and disruptive innovations. The focus on winning the quarter blinds them to the larger game, the one where long-term success requires a commitment to ethical behavior, social responsibility, and environmental stewardship. They may celebrate their quarterly victories, but they are slowly eroding the foundations upon which the company's future depends. The short-sightedness creates a domino effect, impacting not only the company itself, but also the wider ecosystem in which it operates. The single-minded pursuit of profit becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of destruction. This is the tragic flaw of the finite player, the inability to see beyond the immediate horizon, to understand the interconnectedness of actions and consequences, and to embrace the infinite game of building a truly sustainable and valuable enterprise. The focus remains narrowly fixated on the financial statement, overlooking the far more important balance sheet of trust, reputation, and long-term viability. It is the classic case of winning the battle but losing the war, a Pyrrhic victory that leaves everyone worse off in the end. The myopic vision makes them blind to the reality that true success is measured not just in dollars and cents, but also in the positive impact they have on the world around them. The pursuit of short-term rewards becomes a trap, a gilded cage that confines their vision and ultimately limits their potential. This illustrates that a lack of empathy and failure to understand the infinite game creates a vicious cycle of decline. The trap of the finite mindset lies in its inherent vulnerability to manipulation and exploitation. Those who are solely focused on winning, on achieving a specific objective within a defined time frame, become predictable. Their priorities are easily understood, their weaknesses readily apparent. This predictability makes them susceptible to strategies designed to lure them into disadvantageous positions, to exploit their eagerness for short-term gains. A finite player is like a pawn on a chessboard, easily sacrificed for a more significant strategic advantage. They fail to recognize that the chessboard extends far beyond their immediate field of vision, that the game continues even after they have been taken off the board. They are trapped in a cycle of reactive behavior, constantly responding to immediate threats and opportunities, never truly controlling the flow of the game. Their actions lack the foresight and strategic depth required to anticipate future challenges and proactively shape the landscape to their advantage. The finite player, blinded by the desire for immediate gratification, becomes an unwitting participant in a larger game they do not understand, a game where their own actions contribute to their ultimate defeat. The pursuit of short-term advantage becomes a self-imposed prison, limiting their options and making them vulnerable to the long-term strategies of those who are playing a different game entirely. The allure of quick wins clouds their judgment, preventing them from seeing the bigger picture and understanding the subtle nuances of the competitive environment. They are easily distracted by shiny objects, by opportunities that appear too good to be true, often overlooking the hidden costs and potential risks associated with these fleeting advantages. This susceptibility to distraction makes them prime targets for competitors who are willing to sacrifice immediate gains in order to secure a more sustainable and dominant position in the long run. They are like moths drawn to a flame, irresistibly attracted to the immediate rewards, oblivious to the potential for self-destruction. The finite player is unable to adapt to changing circumstances, rigidly adhering to predefined strategies and tactics even when they are no longer effective. Their inflexibility makes them easy to predict and outmaneuver, leaving them vulnerable to competitors who are more agile and adaptable. They are like dinosaurs facing an asteroid, unable to evolve and adapt to the changing environment, ultimately facing extinction. Their rigidity makes them blind to new opportunities and innovative approaches, hindering their ability to compete effectively in the long run. They fail to recognize that the business landscape is constantly evolving, and that survival requires a willingness to embrace change and adapt to new challenges. The pursuit of control becomes an illusion, a false sense of security that masks their underlying vulnerability. They are like generals fighting the last war, clinging to outdated strategies and tactics that are no longer relevant in the current context. Their failure to adapt makes them increasingly irrelevant, marginalized in the marketplace, and ultimately doomed to failure. They overestimate their own capabilities and underestimate the competition, leading to costly mistakes and strategic miscalculations. They fail to recognize that the marketplace is a complex ecosystem, and that success requires a deep understanding of the competitive landscape. The pursuit of dominance becomes a self-defeating prophecy, alienating customers, partners, and employees, and ultimately undermining their own success. They underestimate the importance of relationships, viewing others as merely instruments to achieve their own objectives. They fail to recognize that long-term success depends on building strong and mutually beneficial relationships with all stakeholders. In the infinite game, strategy transcends mere tactics and becomes a fundamental way of thinking. It's about understanding the underlying dynamics of the system, anticipating future trends, and positioning yourself to capitalize on emerging opportunities. Those fixated on short-term gains often fall victim to their own limited perspective. They fail to see the bigger picture, missing the subtle shifts in the landscape that can dramatically alter the competitive environment. True strategists are not simply reacting to events, they are shaping them. They understand that the best defense is often a good offense, and they are constantly looking for ways to disrupt the status quo and gain a competitive advantage. This requires a deep understanding of human psychology, recognizing the motivations, biases, and vulnerabilities of your rivals. It's about using this knowledge to influence their decisions, creating opportunities for yourself while simultaneously undermining their positions. The strategic mind sees the world as a complex web of interconnected systems, where every action has a ripple effect that can either strengthen or weaken your position. It's about understanding these causal relationships and using them to your advantage, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of success. This approach demands a calculated detachment, an ability to see the game from a higher level, free from emotional attachments and personal biases. It's about making decisions based on logic and reason, rather than impulsivity or wishful thinking. The strategic player is not afraid to take calculated risks, understanding that the potential rewards often outweigh the potential costs. But these risks are always carefully considered, based on a thorough analysis of the available information. There is a deliberate element of deception involved, a willingness to mislead your opponents and create false impressions. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping public perception, and manipulating expectations to your advantage. This requires a deep understanding of communication and persuasion, knowing how to craft messages that resonate with your target audience. The strategic approach requires an unwavering focus on the long game, resisting the temptation to pursue short-term gains at the expense of long-term sustainability. It's about building a resilient organization that can withstand the inevitable challenges and setbacks that arise in the course of competition. This requires a strong culture of learning and adaptation, constantly monitoring the environment and adjusting your strategy as needed. The best strategists are also masters of collaboration, understanding that the power of a network is often greater than the power of any individual. It's about building alliances, forging partnerships, and leveraging the strengths of others to achieve your objectives. This requires a willingness to share information and resources, creating a mutually beneficial ecosystem where everyone benefits from the collective success. In essence, the strategic approach is about thinking like a chess grandmaster, anticipating your opponent's moves, planning several steps ahead, and always seeking to gain a positional advantage. It's about understanding the rules of the game, but also knowing how to bend them to your advantage, pushing the boundaries of what is possible and constantly challenging the status quo. It's a mindset that embraces calculated risk, relentless analysis, and a long-term perspective, all while acknowledging that the game never truly ends. Throughout history, empires have risen and fallen based on their ability to grasp the infinite nature of their existence. Consider the Roman Empire, a civilization that initially understood the importance of long-term strategic planning. They built roads, established legal systems, and created a sophisticated administrative apparatus, all designed to ensure their enduring dominance. They focused on expansion, not just for immediate territorial gains, but to secure resources and establish strategic outposts that would serve them for centuries to come. Their military prowess was not merely about winning battles. It was about projecting power and deterring future threats. However, as the empire grew, internal strife and a focus on immediate gratification began to erode their long-term vision. The pursuit of short-term political power, coupled with economic mismanagement and a decline in civic virtue, ultimately led to their downfall. They lost sight of the infinite game, becoming consumed by internal squabbles and the pursuit of fleeting advantages. The empire's leadership became more interested in personal gain than in the long-term health of the civilization. The focus shifted from building enduring infrastructure and institutions to enriching themselves and their cronies. This created a cycle of corruption and decay that slowly undermined the foundations of the empire. Their borders became overextended and increasingly difficult to defend. The military, once a symbol of Roman strength, became bogged down in endless conflicts and plagued by internal divisions. The empire's resources were stretched thin, and its ability to respond to threats diminished. This decline in strategic thinking was mirrored in their military strategies. Roman generals began to focus on winning individual battles rather than securing long-term strategic advantages. They became more concerned with personal glory than with the overall success of the campaign. This led to a series of costly victories that ultimately weakened the empire. Similarly, in the context of warfare, a nation that only focuses on winning individual battles will inevitably lose the war. Victory on the battlefield is fleeting if it doesn't translate into a sustainable peace and a favorable geopolitical position. True strategic thinkers understand that war is not just about military might. It's about economics, diplomacy, and information warfare. It's about shaping the narrative, winning the hearts and minds of the population, and building alliances that will endure long after the fighting stops. Consider the Vietnam War, where the United States achieved tactical victories on the battlefield, but ultimately failed to achieve its strategic objectives. The U.S. military focused on body counts and territorial control, but failed to understand the underlying political and social dynamics of the conflict. They underestimated the resilience and determination of the Vietnamese people, and they failed to win their support. The U.S. also failed to build a strong coalition of allies, isolating themselves internationally and facing growing domestic opposition to the war. The war became a quagmire, draining the nation's resources and undermining its credibility. The U.S. military eventually withdrew, leaving behind a divided and unstable country. The Vietnam War serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of focusing on short-term tactical gains at the expense of long-term strategic objectives. It highlights the importance of understanding the broader context of a conflict and of building a comprehensive strategy that addresses all aspects of the challenge. A true strategist understands that war is not just about bullets and bombs. It's about ideas, values, and the will to win. It requires a deep understanding of the enemy, their motivations, and their vulnerabilities. It also requires a clear articulation of your own objectives and a commitment to achieving them through all available means. The key lesson here is that a short-sighted focus on quarterly gains, individual achievements, or immediate gratification is a recipe for eventual failure in any domain. The strategic mindset prioritizes sustainability, resilience, and long-term growth over fleeting moments of triumph. It requires the ability to anticipate future challenges, adapt to changing circumstances, and maintain a clear vision of the desired outcome. It's about building systems and processes that can withstand the test of time, and about fostering a culture of innovation and continuous improvement. The strategic leader understands that success is not a destination, but a journey. It requires a constant commitment to learning, adapting, and evolving. It's about embracing change and viewing challenges as opportunities for growth. The strategic leader also understands the importance of building strong relationships and fostering collaboration. They recognize that no one can achieve lasting success alone, and that the power of a network is often greater than the power of any individual. It's about creating a supportive ecosystem